I'm so glad to be here. I tell you what, your amazing leadership. What an amazing... You're walking in an atmosphere of miracles, ladies. That's what you're sitting on. That chair you're sitting on, somebody else provided it for you. And today, based on that faith, we're going to launch and never be the same for the sacrifice that's already been planted in this conference by servant leaders. Give the servant leader volunteers a big hand. Thank you, servant leaders. And thank you to the team here. What an amazing team you have. I want to recognize Pastor Rosalinda and her wonderful husband, Pastor Carlos Rivera. It's a good time to clap. You can always honor your leaders. Yeah. This is a legacy house. People who have stood the test of time. 50 years in the same community. You know, I hear people talk about, the church is full of hypocrites. Yeah, it is. We're not perfect people, but let me tell you, when God provides servants like you've got, 50 years of authentic leadership, you can trust that God is using them and you are connected to that amazing legacy. So we honor you, especially today, Pastor Rosalinda. I believe I'm going to yes, I think that's a good idea. I believe you're going places that you had no idea. And I just speak to the calling in your life, the secret garden that is born out of sacrifice. And so today I honor you. Thank you, Rosalinda, for inviting me. And thank you for who you are and who you're becoming. I'm excited to watch you grow. Well, I'm blessed and honored to be here. And, she read that very long introduction. And she read it just the way I wrote it. So don't you think she did a good job? But now I'm going to bring the evidence. It's really true. Here is my wedding picture. I thought you'd like to see it. There I am. 52 years ago, my mother was creative, and she put barnyard animals, that's a dove, in my wedding. And here is my Gone with the Wind wedding dress. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. And then here is my family. We have 4 sons. There they are. That was in you knew it was in the 90s. You knew. You could tell. And 26 years ago, we moved from Seattle, which was my upbringing, where I was born. And we went really as missionaries to urban Miami. My husband likes to call it the good. What's the good? It's where God works in the hood. So it's the good, and that's where we went. Here's a picture of that, those many years ago. We actually had church in an air dome on I-95. That means a blow-up balloon. Yep, that's what it was. That's our church. That's where we started. And 26 years later, now God's helped us. We planted 5 churches out of our church, and now our son has transitioned. Here's our family photo now, and there they are. All my boys are preachers. Their wives are good preachers. We have 10 grandchildren. Here they are. They're perfect. Now just agree with me. These are the most perfect grandchildren. 5 girls and 5 boys. And we're about to have another girl. So I'm blessed. It's 100-fold return. So thank you with the keys. And I'm here today to talk briefly. And I believe God's got a word for you. If you want to receive right now, I'm going to ask you to extend your faith. You say, what are you talking about? Say, I'm a mom. I raised a lot of kids, and I've learned that we've got to act out what we want to be able to receive it. So right now, I'm going to ask you, if you want a revelation now in the next 40 minutes, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. Raise your hand. Close your eyes. Elevate your awareness. And just quietly, God knows what you're facing. He knows everything about your situation. And right now, God, we're asking for a revelation that will lead to transformation in the situation we're thinking about right now. And all God's girls said, amen. Now, I couldn't hear you. Amen. One more time. Amen. Okay, here we go. Here's what I believe God brought me here to tell you. Here is the one big idea. God's power is always bigger than my problem. Say it with me. God's power is always bigger than my problem. Okay, here's the theme first. No, despite all these things, overwhelming victory is ours through Christ who loved us. Now that is one of the Bible translations, but here is a version that I like to read in my personal devotions. It is not a translation, it is a paraphrase. I'm telling that to all the Bible scholars out here. But in the Message Bible, Romans 8:37, it says, none of this phases us because Jesus loves us. Oh, I like that. And I really came to tell you stories about two women. This is a women's conference. So the men are invited to stay, but it's really geared to a woman's heart. One of my favorite Bible women in the Bible, favorite Bible characters, is a girl by the name of Rahab. And we're going to read a few verses, the story of Rahab. Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent two men as spies. Go, he said, look over the land, check out Jericho. They left and arrived at the house of the harlot named Rahab and stayed there. Yeah, of course they did, right? Two men in a foreign country. There was no Ritz-Carlton. Yeah, they stayed at Rahab's house. The king of Jericho was told. So her city leader, her king, was told, hey, men from Israel have come to spy out the land. And the king just happened to know Rahab. He said, send word to Rahab, bring out the men who come to you. They're here to spy. The woman, Rahab, had taken the two men and hidden them. She said, yes, men did come. She's telling this to the king. But I didn't know where they came from. When it was dark, they left. I think she's telling a big fib. I don't know where they went. Hurry. You might catch them. Verse 6, she had actually taken them up on the roof and hidden them under stalks of flax. Before the spies were down for the night, she came up to them on the roof and said, I know that God has given you the land. We're all afraid. Everyone in the country feels hopeless. We've heard how God dried up the Red Sea for you and what you did to the two Amorite kings and whom you put under a holy curse and destroyed. We heard it and our hearts sank. God, your God, is God above all heavens and earth below. Then she went on. I like this girl. You know what she said? She said, now promise me by God, I showed mercy. Show my family mercy. Spare my father and mother, my brothers, my sisters, everyone connected to my family." The men said, "Our lives are yours, but don't tell anyone what we're doing. When God gives us the land, we'll treat you kindly." She lowered them out of the window. Think of it now. Get into the story. She lowered them out of a window, these two guys that she was hiding. Why? Because her house was on the city wall. She told them, "Head for the hills. Hide out there for 3 days until they return, and then you go on your way." I'm not going to assume that everybody in the room knows the story. And so what happened is they went from Egypt all the way up to their first conquest so that they could enter into the Holy Land. 40 years, a guy named Moses, a great Bible character. He was the leader of the children of Israel. He was actually the adopted son of Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the world. The word Exodus in the Greek is a going out. It's a mass departure. And when he went to Pharaoh, Moses, he said, "Let my people go." If you saw the movie. If you don't know the story, he said, "We want to get out of here. We don't want to be slaves anymore." And Pharaoh, who was counting on the labor of those 2.5 million people, is what we believe. He needed that labor to keep his government going the way it had been. So he said, "No way, Moses. I'm not doing that." And Moses said, "Well, you better, because God's going to set us free." And Pharaoh said, "Nope." So if you know the story, what happened is God sent plagues to try to coax Pharaoh to let his people go. And they progressively got worse and worse, all the way up to the point that God told Moses, "Tell the people, the Israelis, that they need to do something because I'm going to send the worst plague." And Moses said, "Well, what do they need to do?" And God said they need to take a lamb and take the blood and paint it over their doorposts. It sounds kind of crazy. Doesn't that sound like a crazy idea? And the people said, "Well, okay, I guess we will." So they did exactly that. They painted their door posts in their individual homes. And God sent a death angel. And every house that did not have this blood covering, the eldest child inside the house died. Now you talk about horror. I can't really imagine what could have been more horrible than that. And all of a sudden, Pharaoh said, "You know what? I changed my mind. I want you out of here." So Moses led the people on the great exodus out. And they began. But 40 years they wandered and wandered. Now, Rahab's story, this woman I want to tell you about, her story begins as the children of Israel have been wandering and they're still in the wilderness. That word wilderness. I identify with that word. I have a beginning, I step out, and then I find myself wandering in the wilderness. What happens to the 2.5 million people is they keep having children and they keep going on and they keep walking in circles. And finally, their leader, Moses, he goes to heaven. And when he does, God elevates Joshua to be the new leader. And he tells Joshua, "Listen, you've been wandering in this wilderness, but I'm going to take you into the promised land, and you're going to claim it. So Joshua, he stands up and says, okay, God, I'm going to do what you asked me to do. So he sends 2 spies to the first city that he has come upon, because this is going to be the first place that he proves his leadership in taking the promised land. Don't you love this idea? This is like a movie, isn't it? Joshua needs military intel. This year, by the way, we know it's about 1406 BC. And those spies were smuggled in to Jericho, and they, of course, went to the bed and breakfast. I don't know. Maybe it was 5-star. But they went to the hotel that Rahab was offering. Let me take you to Jericho on that day. The people knew the Israeli army was out in the plains. Everybody was terrified. Rahab was terrified. We just listened to her, right? Here she was, a prostitute. She is scorned by society. Her name identifies her. She is labeled. And then the next part, she is living on the edge of a wall. Her life was on the edge.